and John Jenkins and Nick Fairley and them, even though Nick Fairley is on the inside. I realize that, and so is Jenkins. We're going to pull up everybody who's played on the other side, who plays on the side that's designed to get pressure on the quarterback. That's the left side, the left tackle. And we'll see if there's anything that's being provided to help out Cameron Jordan. Go ahead while I look up that stat.
And I'm glad you're giving me the floor on this, and I know we're going to get back to Cam as soon as you can get the stats. But there's something that I want to bring up for everybody listening. And if you want to, you can tweet at me and give me the answers yourself, or, whenever you feel free. I don't understand the love affair with James Laurinaitis. I'm not saying he's a bad linebacker. He is a very good middle linebacker. What I don't understand is how you benched Stephon Anthony to start James Laurinaitis, and I haven't seen anything from him that's absolutely sticking out. If you're going to tell me, well, he had 7 tackles last night, you know what doesn't impress me? Because Stephon Anthony as a middle linebacker, as a rookie, looked the exact same way. They're basically the same type of player. They're great when it comes to being run-stoppers and run-stuffers to an extent. I understand the Saints got ran all over last night, and James Laurinaitis got pushed just clean out of the play pretty much every single time. But I understand what their strengths are. You're not going to ever confuse James Laurinaitis with the Aaron Kendricks or anybody like that, some of the middle linebackers that can fly around the field and make plays and also produce in the passing game. That's not who he is. He is a 2-down linebacker that's going to be great at calling the defenses and getting everybody set up. He's going to be one of those guys that is good in run support, not great at this point in his career. But to me, you replace Stephon Anthony with an older Stephon Anthony, and I think being more patient in that situation may have paid off longer dividends, because now Stephon Anthony can barely see the field, and you're putting him at strong side linebacker, which is basically exposing him to the passing game, which he doesn't excel at. And now fans are saying, well, that's why they're not playing Stephon Anthony, because he's a bust. I don't believe he's a bust. I just believe he's out of place. And you can't, and I find it hard to see what James Laurinaitis is doing that you would even want to bench a Stephon Anthony. I don't see it just yet.
Well, I've got that stat, but let me go ahead and add this. I agree with you. I know we talked about it 2 weeks ago after the Raiders game when Anthony got like 13 snaps. James Laurinaitis, you can't convince me that he's better than Stephon Anthony, because they play at the exact same level. One's just about 7 years older. Why would you then take that player and bench him? Because that's what he's doing. He's riding the pine. He came in a little bit more last night, but, I mean, did you really expect that to just change things? Why don't we go in and get this guy, throw him in as a starter, and then take the guy who last year I probably had as the 3rd best defensive player? Yes, I know it's a bad defensive team again. It's hard to say that that's worth anything, but he was probably my 3rd best defensive player last year behind Bro and Cam Jordan. So why is he riding the pine? And let me just throw these stats out there, because we could spend 30 minutes talking about that subject. But Kasim Edebali, keep in mind that Kasim Edebali and Paul Kruger both are not run-stopping guys. So bear in mind, this is listing off somebody who is not a complete football player. They are not 4-down defensive players or 3-down defensive players. Kasim Edebali has 2. Paul Kruger has 1. So between 2 players sharing snaps who can't play every down, they have 3 hurries, no sacks, and no quarterback hits registered. Now, this is going by Sporting Charts. There's a lot of analytics websites out there. Pro Football Focus might say they have something different. I'm going off this one just because I'm using something that's even. I'm going to pull Cameron Jordan's off this. I'm not going to have like ESPN Go's stats and they compare it to this. I'm going to use the same medium for all of them. Cameron Jordan has got a sack and a half, 2 hurries, and 3 quarterback hits. So he's doing as much and more than what 2 players on the other side of the line are doing who aren't able to do. Plus, Cam Jordan plays every down to stop the run. Now, keep in mind, I'm not, dissing Kasim Edebali. I'm not dissing Paul Kruger. I'm just saying those are role players. Cameron Jordan is a starter. Cameron Jordan is a Pro Bowl level starter. There's a reason that he's gotten that honor before. If this team were better, people like him and Ingram would see the Pro Bowl a lot more often.
Agreed.
We've got to find somebody. I know we hate saying this because I don't think there's anybody left in New Orleans who likes Junior Gillette. But we've got to find somebody to replace Junior Gillette. Even if that person only pulls in 6 sacks a season, not even necessarily 13 like he managed to do one season. Somebody to pull some pressure on a quarterback. And we can't rely on Sheldon Rankins to do that because he's the inside pressure guy. We need a complete defensive line. And we're really only one player from that. But that one player is the most crucial pass rushing player. We've got the right defensive end in Cam Jordan set for 5 years minimum to me. He should be good because he does seem to eat the injury bug a lot. He's solid. He should be good. Nick Fairley, he's a solid role player, and he's shown that he can still start, and he's got some years left in the tank. Sheldon Rankins, I'm praying that he gets healthy and stays healthy because that guy has the talent to be the next. So that leaves one player on the defensive line that we still need. It just happens to be the most important player on the defensive line in today's NFL, and that is your 3-down pass rusher. Once we get that, I know names are already getting thrown around on Twitter because it looks like we're heading to the top 5 of the draft, and I know some of the people listening in know what names I'm talking about. Names are already getting thrown around. Maybe we get that. Maybe that fixes things. But we're a lot closer to finding that, quote unquote, finally have a field of players than we were 2 years ago under Rob Ryan. So
I'll say this really quickly, and then I'll touch on the point that you were making about some of the names being thrown around. As far as the point I want to kind of end up with was speaking on both Cam Jordan and James Laurinaitis. I'll start with James Laurinaitis first, simply because I don't want anybody to think it's a hatred, because I was one of the people who was very, very vocal about the idea that I didn't like the move in and of itself. Not that I didn't like James Laurinaitis, I just didn't think the move was necessary because of everything that was going to transpire. You were going to have to move Stephon Anthony, a young middle linebacker who, in my opinion, played it extremely well. And here's the numbers to back that up. Through the first 3 games of this season, James Laurinaitis has 17 tackles. Through the first 3 games of last season, Stephon Anthony had 16 tackles. I'm not going to talk any other numbers because that's all you need to know, simply because they're the same player. One is just a lot older and costs a lot more. You have Stephon Anthony under a rookie contract. The premise going in was James Laurinaitis knew how to call the defense. Who knew how to call the defense when you had 2 different defensive coordinators last year? So in my opinion, Stephon Anthony played extremely well, and he's a lot cheaper for a first-round pick. I think the Saints could have took the money that they paid James Laurinaitis and put that somewhere else. Maybe on a pass rusher to help Cam Jordan.
Well, let's say this. I think the Saints have been playing a lot of Madden lately because you can see it in their free agent signings the past few years. They're just seeing guys that have an 80 or a 90 rating and signing them, regardless of if they fit or if they've got somebody else. Because James Laurinaitis might have had an 84 rating on Madden, and poor old Stephon Anthony might have only had an 82, but we went ahead and signed him because we had the money. Whoever's there, I know they added the whole scheme thing to the teams now, or they're 3-4 aggressive or cover 2, but nobody looks at that. You just sign whoever is the highest ranking player available, and that's what they did with James Laurinaitis. He's a good player. They brought him in even though they didn't need him. Could have spent the money on, say, a guard, or could have spent the money on, finishing that defensive line, but no. James Laurinaitis was there. He had the highest ranking. Might as well sign him.
I said this on Twitter earlier today. The Saints can no longer afford to play this game of, we're just going to try to use undrafted free agents and low-round draft picks. We're going to try to find, washed-up free agents or free agents that they're teetering on the border of being washed up, but they're not just there right now. The Saints can no longer afford to play that game, because you put yourself behind the 8 ball. Yes, I understand, as Rev said earlier, nobody wants to admit that Junior Gillette was a total idiot and that he should be even allowed to be fed around these parts. but the idea of his production cannot be erased. He was a very productive player, and now you put yourself in a position to where you have tried 5 guys, in order to replace that production. So now what happens is instead of you taking the best player available, it's time for the Saints to get an elite defensive player. It's time for you to draft from Texas A&M. You have to get a guy like that. You have to get the number 1 pass rusher. You can no longer afford to say, well, we'll draft a guard with our first pick, and we'll try to get a pass rusher later in the draft. No, my brother, you have to get one now. And the time is now. You have to get this. The Saints can no longer afford to bargain shop, because it's not like you're hitting on your draft picks at a high rate to where you can say, well, if we get him in the 4th round, it'll be just as good as the 1st rounder. Not it. Not happening.
Yeah, we've got responding to a message on Twitter right now, hating on Andres Pete because he got beat by a bull rush by a quote-unquote cadaver. Let me just throw that out there, Saints Nation. Please remember that the bull rush and the spin move were Freeney's signature moves. We're talking about a guy who is a 10-sack-a-year guy. He has a lot of talent. So, yes, I realize he's older. He's in his last years, but don't hate on the man. They always have something in the tank. I mean, have the Saints not seen the same thing? Did Jabari Greer, after injuries, still didn't just make some plays? Or, perfect example, Mike McKenzie against the Patriots. Did he make some plays, but are you really going to start him every play? No. But he still had something in the tank. So don't hate on Pete so bad when he goes against a future Hall of Famer and gives up a sack. Come on, guys. Be fair.
Actually, I'm not mad at Pete giving up that sack. I think the problem with the sack was the timing of it and how crucial it was at that particular period. But I'm not mad at Pete giving up that sack. I'm not going to be one of the guys that gets that goes off on him a little too hard for that particular play. I would have rather not see Pete at left tackle at all. But hey, it's what happened. I'm more upset at the idea that the Saints put themselves in a hole through self-inflicted wounds to even be in a position to where that play even matters. Because no one is talking about the play in which Drew Brees he totally lost Trufant coming on that corner blitz. Nobody's talking about that play, but they all love to talk about the play with Andres Pete. Both of them were sacks. Both of them were, drive killers. So you gotta you gotta take those plays into consideration. The Atlanta Falcons won a play. They're professionals too. They get paid to sack the quarterback too. I'm not mad at that. I'm always going to harp on the fact that Drew Brees being behind forced him to throw a pick six. That is a backbreaker. The muff punt, that was a backbreaker. Why? Because it directly related to 14 points in the game. The Saints lost by 13. Mm-hmm. That's what you get mad at.
Yeah, but even then, I mean, come on. We are talking about this. Drew Brees does that. I mean, that's just part of who he is. Don't let him get down by 2 or 3 touchdowns with time running out. I mean, that's just – and even a lot of the great quarterbacks did that. I mean, Troy Aikman threw away games. Brett Favre threw away a game for us that we still celebrate today. I mean, anytime you have to play from behind – I mean, if you look at Drew Brees' winning seasons, like the 2009 season, like the 2011 season, like the 2006 season, he didn't have to worry about that a lot. He didn't throw a lot of those interceptions because they were able to play with a strong defense and a lead. I understand because of where the Saints' defense is now, that's simply going to happen. So even then, I can't get too mad. Yeah, it's backbreaking, but don't we see it coming? Don't we know it's going to happen?
Yeah. I mean, pretty much everybody knew it was going to happen eventually. But, it is what it is when it comes to the way that play, transpired. To me, I just think there are too many instances in which you can always look at a play or two here and there in any game and say, you know what, this is where the Saints lost it. The first play was definitely the muff punt because it sucked the air out of the building and even shook the Saints' confidence because you go right down the field, you score on Atlanta, you let Atlanta come back down and score, then that play takes place, and all of a sudden, it's a different ball game. Mm-hmm. For me, I'd like to see them. I just want them to knock off the